Hello again. Welcome back to our talk about immigration issues today. Let's go now to you, Tamara, on line 4. Hi, Tamara. You're on the line.
Good afternoon, Christine, and good afternoon, your guests. My son has graduated from Queens, 4 years of Queens, with honors. He went to Germany. He studied now for 10 years in Germany. He's a medical doctor. He got married last year. His wife is also a medical doctor. She's a gynecologist. And she has practiced nearly 3 years in Switzerland and in Germany. He is a medical doctor anywhere in the European countries. Like right now, they're both employed in Switzerland. Now, when I asked him if they want to come back to Canada, he cannot come back. I mean, he doesn't want to come back to Canada because he has to write the MCAT plus do an internship again. It might take about up to 3 years of him to being recognized as a medical doctor here in our country. And he is Canadian. He was born in Toronto, and we have such a shortage of doctors. Now there are 2 doctors. One is my son and his wife.
Tamara, glad you called in. This represents a critical problem, and it's a crying shame, really, because we're desperate for physicians in this country. And a case like your own, Dr. Thambaraj.
And this one is even worse because...
There are 2 of them, too.
This is not an immigration problem.
No.
It's a question of the barriers that are set up by the College of Physicians and Surgeons, for example. And I can add to this viewer's query because I know at least of 2 cases. I had a case in which I brought a famous cardiologist to Canada to work in a clinic who taught in one of the top universities in the United States for 25 years, who married a Canadian and said, you know, I'm going to try to practice in Canada. They put so many roadblocks. So my question to him was, who is going to interview you at the college, because you could be interviewing them?
Precisely.
And you know, this is a doctor who has won all kinds of international awards. And the other one is, I know of a case that I also had where a Canadian doctor who trained and is now a cardiovascular surgeon, he trained in Texas Heart Institute, which is probably the best in the world. And he was told that if he were to return to Canada to practice, he would have to go to a town up north where there is no need for his specialty. And meanwhile, we have a shortage in Toronto.
Wow.
So go figure.
Dr. Thambaraj, are you getting anywhere? You represent this Association of International Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario. Do you feel that you're making any progress whatsoever? We can't keep losing the best people.
At the moment, I think we are not making any progress. We seem to have hit a wall. The wall is that there's an acknowledgement of the problem, but there doesn't seem to be anyone or anybody who is willing to take up the responsibility to address this problem. There is a lot of shifting of the blame. When I go as the president of this association, together with my executive, to either the universities or to the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario or to the Ministry of Health, we just get shunted around. And that is the problem. You
get lost in a bureaucracy.
I think that's what's happening, because unless someone looks at this in a strategic way, with a good overview of the whole situation, it's just going to get worse. There are 2 cohorts here we are talking about. We're talking, number one, of Canadians who have gone overseas, who are not able to come back because even if they're practicing in Europe, right, where standards are very high. And we have immigrants who have come in, who have become Canadian citizens, who are paying taxes here. Many of us are doing that, but we're not able to get into the system.
So we're not letting in trained doctors that could benefit our country, but this article we found last week from the Toronto Star. Take a look at this headline. Defenseless against a world of TB. Toronto, with its growing immigrant population, will likely see an increase of deadly contagious tuberculosis, experts say. I find this very troubling. Yes. There's a need in this country. The population is getting older, and as a population gets older, we all know we're not getting any healthier.
Right.
And yet, we're suffering from a deplorable shortage of physicians, a problem that obviously interview after interview says, with the two of you also here today, as well as some others in the past, there is some solution, but for some reason, the ball seems to be falling through.
Well, let me tell you from the immigration point of view what can be done. What can be done is what the Americans have done. The Americans have something called the J1 visa, which is not perfect.
Okay.
But the J1 visa allows foreign doctors to come into the United States to study and to train. And if they can get a visa waiver because they find a position in an underserved area in the United States, they can remain in the United States. Otherwise, they have to leave the United States, and for 2 years they cannot return because the J1s are based on reciprocity with other countries. It's a complicated system that I don't want to get into. But anyways, a lot of physicians end up staying in the United States. And the advantage of that is that the physicians are foreign doctors who are retrained in the United States in many situations, or they're medical students who are admitted into U.S. universities. They happen to come from other countries, and once they graduate, the Americans do not lose them. We don't have such a system in Canada. And I'll tell you, Christine, what the tragedy is. The problem in Canada is that we need to rethink the immigration system as a totality.
Certainly.
And we need to stop being so, quote-unquote, Canadian. The system, and you know, Dr. Tambaraj and I were discussing this a few minutes ago, the system as it's set up right now is too, quote-unquote, egalitarian. We cannot treat all the potential immigrants to this country in the same equal way because they have different skills. Yes. So the differentiation that we need to make is based on the skills that the marketplace is demanding from them.
And apparently we're letting in people, which I need to talk to you about later on, with active TB. Let's go first, though, to Christine on line 4. Hi, Christine. You're on the line. Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, I'm an RN from the Philippines, but I've got 4 years of experience of RN in the Philippines and 20 years in Saudi Arabia with the state-of-the-art equipment. And then I was interviewed and got a job at the London Health Sciences Center. But then apparently the College of Nurses of Ontario doesn't want to register me. They said I lack education, that Ontario Nursing Education Program. But then I appealed to the Health and Review Board, and the appeal was, I started appealing from June. Now it's already March. I just followed it up this morning, and they said they still haven't reviewed the papers, but they have interviewed me. They said, they asked me what are my qualifications. I said I have a lot of training from, like in Saudi Arabia, and I have all those new equipment, state-of-the-art equipment, and all the surgeries and all these things, because I work in the operating room, and I'm an operating room team leader for 7 years in Saudi Arabia, and I've trained nurses from the United States, from Canada, from Australia, from UK, and all other parts of the world. But then, until now, I haven't had results from the
Christine, thanks for your call. We're going to have to go for a break. Another case being
another
bounced around.
Nurses, we have a tremendous shortage of nurses, and it's only getting worse as the population
we must go for a break now. When we come back, I'm going to be asking our guests, what are her options? We'll be back.